Hello everybody and welcome back. This is Not a Pro Gardener here. And today we are in Zone 6B. We are in Zone 6B. Today we are planting onions, bulbing onions, and some multiplying onions. So, we're going to be doing this in our raised bed gardens, and you'll see which one here in a minute. And we already amended the furrow and the soil. We put a pre-plant in the soil with the drip tape, a 777 balanced organic fertilizer. Okay, and then on top of that we use some old hen manure that it's been laying around for almost a year now. It's just some old chicken manure that we had stockpiled. We just put that down with the drip tape, and it's been sitting in there for about 4 or so weeks now past then. And then for the drip tape system, we put in it's called a manifold system, where I'll show you a little bit or more closer later. It's where it has a main line all the way around it, and then the two drip lines or three drip lines running through it, so water goes all the way around and flows from both ways. It helps prevent like clogs. It seems to help the flow better through it all the way around your drip tape. The next thing we did, as you may have seen in one of our last videos, we did get some compost. And it was a little wood chippy, and the bad things about wood chips is wood chips can kind of eat away at that nitrogen you got, so you got to amend the furrow with some more nitrogen to kind of compensate for that. So if you have a bunch of wood chips in your beds, you just need to understand that that could be sapping some of that nitrogen away from your plants and may cause you some problems there. So what we did to alleviate that problem was we sifted the most that we could out of it, which I just made the best of what I had. So I'll pop up the image of a time lapse of me doing that, and you can just kind of see what it looks like of us burying that chicken manure underneath of that and all that stuff. Because onions are really heavy feeders. They really like their nitrogen in the beginning to get their foliage built up, and then once the bulbing phase hits, you want to kind of die off of that as well. So it's about 57 degrees outside. There's a slight breeze blowing, and it's partly cloudy. And I gotta say, it is a beautiful day for planting onions. So, why are we planting onions? The onions we seed started, we'll pop up a card of us seed starting these onions so you can get a picture of where that came from. The reason we are transplanting these now, these plants that we seed started, they are to the size that we think is good enough, because in onions in our zone, you have to get them in the ground as soon as possible, because sometimes it heats up pretty quick around here, and the onions, they need as much time as they can in the ground to grow them big bulbs that you like to have, them big old softball size ones, So you need to get them in the ground as early as you can, and they may look like small transplants, but I've done this many times, and the sooner I can get them in the ground, the less transplant shock they have. The bigger the plant, the more transplant shock they're going to have, and we do this to get as much growth as we can on the foliar aspect. We want to grow as many leaves as we can in the beginning phase, before the bulbing phase, and we happen to have the time to spare today. It rained a couple days ago, and it's still kind of wet. As well as the bulbing onions, we also have our multiplying onions that, if you may have seen last year, and we're going to be planting them again. And I'm going to kind of show you right now a little bit about how I kind of got them ready. So they was dry bulbs I stored in the garage over winter, and I wasn't quite sure they was just going to make it. They started drying out. I'm just going to show you that you can take those bulbs, put them in a small tray, and add water to it to revitalize them and bring them back. So they was pretty rough to start, but let me show you kind of what we're working with now. So these guys shriveled up a lot in the garage, and they got all dried out. So let me take you in close here. See all these roots coming out now? All these roots that I got coming out of here now? All I did was I stuck the dry bulbs in some water, and it's been about 2 weeks, and they're coming back out of it. Green leaves. These guys are ready to go in the ground. This is part of what we're doing today. We're going to try to multiply some of our seed stock, but this is the first year that we're actually going to get to try them, so I'm pretty excited about that. These will replace me seed starting bunching onions in the future. So if I can grow a successful seed stock again this year, I'll have quite a few bit more of what I got now. And then I will not have to buy bunching onions again, and then I do not have to seed start them anymore. Okay, so now, onions. But I'm just going to give you a base overview of these before we get over there and get down and dirty and start planting these guys. So onions require full sun and fertile, well-drained soil with a pH of 6.0 to 7.0. Sandy loam soils are ideals. In heavier soils, you need to use raised beds or raised rows to promote soil drainage. So like if I planted in my in-ground garden a heavy clay soil, it obviously holds a lot more moisture in the soil than like a sandy loam soil or something like that. So you kind of have to keep that in mind and just keep an eye on your moisture. And you can alleviate too much moisture by raising up a row, by hilling up a row of dirt and then planting on top of that. That is one way to alleviate those problems. If you're like planting in a low spot, you could hill up a row and plant on top of the row, and that will help drain that little spot right away from your plant. Now you can also direct seed onions, but in my opinion, it's something that's not feasible unless you have a stale weed seed bed, such as carrots or spinach and onions. You just can't seed these guys in new gardens because the weed pressure is just way too much for these guys because they grow and outpace the vegetables that you are growing. And it's kind of it's like a disappointment because you think that something's going wrong or you did something wrong, but in all honesty, it's just they can't compete with the weeds early on. So like in my last video, I planted spinach on my raised bed on top of compost. So that is one way to do that, to alleviate a weed problem. For carrots the same way, or you make a stale weed seed bed by weeding it over and over until the weed seeds are finally burnt out of it. I have done that too, just it takes more time, and you don't want to waste too much time planting something now and then you're waiting 4 weeks and then the weeds finally outpace it and then you just can't weed all them weeds out of there, and it just is, you need to just scrap it and start over after that, because that you don't want to get discouraged doing any of this stuff. Okay, you just need to do best practices for you. What's more available to you for your time and your money. I mean, some people plant these things in containers, pots and stuff like that, and they don't have to deal with weeds, and that's a huge thing for some people to start with, because it's a very easily controlled, and it's a huge confidence booster when you grow your first vegetable, if for beginning gardeners. And that's pretty important for some people to not start with things that are too hard at first and just kind of ease your way into it. You want to keep the onions well watered and weeded. Okay, so we covered the weeds because onions, they are also shallow rooted, so you need to do shallow cultivation around them because you don't want to tear up their roots too bad, because it'll kind of stunt them a little bit if you get too heavy with the cultivation, and it'll kind of uproot them a little bit. Then you're kind of getting a little too rough with it. They definitely love their water, and especially in the bulbing phase. So that's something that whenever the bulbing phase comes around, you need to cut off your fertilizer, and then that's when you want to start water them a little bit more than what you have been, because they like to suck up that water, and that's what creates that bulb for your onion. They need about 1 inch of rain per week, especially during the bulbing phase. Onion bulbing is triggered for the day length. Okay, so from south to north, the day length changes and varies. We have longer days up here, so you have different types of onions for that different type of day length that you have. Alright, so now that we covered some basic information on onions, let's go ahead and go start growing some onions. So let's go. Alright, so this is what the transplants with just about the average looks like. They're a little bit small, but this is the time I have to put these in the ground. Other than that, I don't know when I'll be able to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and get these guys in now. And let's see if I can find another one just to show you. Even if you don't have these soil blocks on here like this, it don't make that big of a difference. You can still plant them like this, not a big deal. It's just to show you the scale of how big they are. A little bit small, but we're going to go ahead and get them in here and get them watered in. So let's go ahead and get them planted. So I have 3 drip lines in here. I have 1, 2, and then 3 in here. This is about a 4-foot wide bed, so I'm going to try to get like 6 rows of onions in there. So We're going to do about a 6-inch spacing, and then maybe 6 inches apart this way as well. If it's a little closer, a little farther apart, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not going to be too technical with it, so let's go ahead and get them in. So let's see if I can show you. Right here is the drip tape, okay? So I'm going to plant here and here. So I'm going to plant onions here and here. There's going to be one over here, and there's going to be one over here. So I'm going to kind of double row it on each one of these drip lines. And then for this other drip line, it's going to be like right here. So we're going to go ahead and get these lined out all the way down, and then we'll see what we got. Okay, so these are the Calibra yellow onions that we have. The days to maturity is about 110 days. This hybrid storage onion is a long day indeterminate onion that forms large bulbs farther south. It's a robust, upright green tops for improved thrips resistance. Strong bronze, they also have strong bronze skins to help push the storage potential to 6 months and beyond under ideal conditions for storing your bulbs. So I'm just going to barely bury these guys in the ground, not too deep, just a little bit, enough to get them in there, roughly 6 inches away. Just barely going to put these guys down in here and cover them up. Same goes for here, just barely going to put this guy in here and then press them in a little bit to make sure they get some good contact there. So when I'm talking about not planting these very deep, I'm just going to make a little hole here. See a little centipede. See this block of soil around this onion? Don't want to really go much deeper than that. I'm just going to break it up a little bit so you can kind of see here. Let's see if I can get it to focus. That white part, I don't want to bury it any deeper than that white part. It could go a bit deeper, but ideally, if you want somewhere to have a benchmark, I would say stay with that white part right there of the onion. Stay with the white part of the onion. I wouldn't go no deeper. And that's a pretty good rule of thumb. Then they don't get too deep, and you can just make sure that you can make sure of that by the white part on the onion transplant there. And if it gets a hair bit deeper, don't worry too much about it, because when you weed them the first time, some of that dirt's going to get knocked away from there anyway. So that's how you do it. That's how you transplant an onion. Okay, so now we got these Tom multiplying onions. I did break them apart before I put them in the water. They was in clusters, so they're a little bit smaller now. So these are heirloom variety. This is an heirloom variety that has been grown for many generations. This particular strain derives from Thomas County, Georgia. A true multiplying onion that is extremely easy to grow. They will grow in raised bed gardens or in-ground gardens. Once they're established, you will never have to buy them again. They can be eaten raw or sauteed or grilled, whatever you prefer. We're going to go ahead and get these guys planted in here. We're going to start on this side of the bed over here. Okay, so we got a row of drip tape right here, so we're going to plant on each side of it. So I'm going to go ahead and lay these out according to that, just so I have them already in place. Okay, so we're just going to take these, and we already split them once, so I'm just going to leave them how they are. And I'm just going to plant the bulb in the ground, nothing deeper than that. These I might plant a hair bit closer together. Not a big deal. Just about the same spacing, roughly. But I'm really hoping to cultivate this seed stock here this year to get more so I can start eating them. And then I won't have to seed start them other ones next year. This one right here shows a pretty good image of what they look like. You got 3 separate onions growing here as they're multiplying, and there will be more to come off this one later. Okay, so I had just enough. I had literally had just enough multiplying onions to finish this row, this third row here. They look pretty good. I've been hitting them with an organic fertilizer while they've been in the bucket soaking in that water. Try to give them a head start. Got 3 rows of bulbing onions planted. It's hard to see them because they're a little smaller. And then I got 3 rows of these multiplying onions, which is a huge sustainable food source if you can keep them going. Which is one of the reasons why we wanted to add these to the garden. Definitely what I had in mind, and I would say this will probably be enough onions for me this year. I'm pretty satisfied with that. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like the video, like the video. This is Not a Pro Gardener here. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time out here in the garden. Thanks for watching.